It's Friday morning, football's back, and so are we. DFS talk coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Happy football season, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the DFS Friday morning version. I am Scott Jenstad, joined as always on Friday mornings by Ryan Belongia. I got it right, didn't I?
You got it right.
I had a moment of panic as we got on. I'm like, I didn't remember how to say his last name, but we've done it long enough that I should get it by now. Ryan, how are you? A happy football season. Hope all's well. How's everything with you?
Yeah, everything's great. I'm happy to have football back. You know, it was a long summer of losing at golf and baseball. So maybe we can make some money with football back.
I hope so. I hope so too. It's been a weird baseball season for me too. Usually baseball is where I do well. And it's been a weird last year kind of wrecked me. I almost won a lot of money playing baseball last year, and I think it just kind of affected me this year. But I'm really looking forward to football. We've got a lot of good storylines in football. We got a lot of these young 25, 26, 27-year-old quarterbacks kind of taking over the league from some of the older guys with Brady gone and, Rodgers still around in his 40s. It's a really fun time for football with a lot of really good teams. I think it's going to be a really fun and good season. We have it's wide open, a lot of teams that could win it all. So I think it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, me too. A lot of rookies, exciting rookies that are supposed to step in right away. We saw what happened to the Chiefs last night. I think, it's more up in the air than it has been.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's 6 or 7 teams that you can make a pretty good argument for winning it all. And so obviously some will emerge too. But you're right on the rookies. There's a lot of guys that are stepping right into jobs. So it should be a lot of fun, especially some receivers that are exciting. Some running backs. Obviously, we got a running back that's drafted in the first round of season-long leagues in Bijan Robinson. It's exciting. I think that talking DFS though, I think week 1 is week 1 and week 18 are the 2 hardest weeks of the year. We know very little. We've researched, we obviously have studied all these games and everything like that, but there's just so many things with new offensive coordinators, new defensive coordinators. We don't know how teams are going to run defense, how teams are going to run offense. We've got everybody's talking about the Chargers and the Ravens, their new coordinators and the new offense, and everything's going to be, wide open and a lot of points, but we really don't know. It's week 1. We learned so much during these first weeks of the season. How do you generally think about week 1? Because it's really, really difficult. There's pricings all over the place too. There's some guys I looked at prices. I'm like, I can't believe that guy is so low, or I can't believe that guy's so high. I think that pricing on DFS sites hasn't really worked itself out. How do you just generally kind of attack and think about week 1?
Yeah, I think you said it, in that we don't really know, and that I try to embrace that. I think, take more chances than usual. We saw what happened last night, and no one really knows what they're talking about. You saw what happened last night with Gibbs usage and then Montgomery and, the Kansas City wide receivers. Pretty much everything went against what people had been saying.
It's pretty hard for a receiver to play a worse game than Kadarius Toney did last night, by the way. He dropped a couple key balls and then had a drop that turned into a pick 6, the third of Mahomes' career. Toney was horrible last night.
Yeah, and Toney was horrible. He probably single-handedly lost in that game. Sky Moore wasn't much better.
No.
And, it was actually Rashee Rice that was pretty good, who, nobody played in DFS. I couldn't believe last night in the $10 million tournament, Rice was 2.9% owned.
Wow.
Which, I know a lot, we couldn't believe it. And it's one of those things where, and this always happens, where everybody just gets on the same stuff. Everybody's, consuming the same content. People are generally better now than they used to be. And you got to do different things than the field. And I think week 1 provides some of the best opportunity for that, because there just isn't as much that's known.
It's crazy. Rice was the only receiver for the Chiefs with 3 catches last night.
Insane, right?
And he only had 29 yards. We had the touchdown, but that's wild that MVS had 2, Watson had 2. They just kind of spread it around, but not especially well. But anyway, let's get on to the week 1 slate. That game's obviously over. Chiefs are 0-1, pretty wild. We got a big slate this week. It's we always do in week 1. There's no buys, nothing like that yet. We do have some primetime games, but there's only 1 Monday night game. Some years there's been 2. We have 8 games on the early slate, 10 a.m. Pacific for me on the West Coast here, and 5 games on late slate. So it's a busy day. Red Zone channel will be jumping for sure. Thursday night we mentioned was Detroit at Kansas City. That won't be on our slate. We'll talk about Sunday night is the Cowboys and Giants, and then Monday night's the big Bills-Jets game. So we want to talk about that one. But before we get into week one, who wins the Super Bowl? I'm putting you on the spot.
Bengals.
I didn't expect that. Bengals. That's it's hard to really beat that one. I'm gonna go. I really, really want to take the 49ers, but I'm gonna go with the Bills.
Okay.
I think it's the year that they finally figure out the playoffs and get over the top. But
Okay.
We'll go Bills Bengals AFC Championship game. It'll be a lot of fun.
That would be great.
Yeah. But so we don't have a lot of high totals this week. It's not coming out of the gate swinging this week. We only have 2 games that are over 47. I looked at the totals as of, I think it was yesterday. The most popular game, the biggest game by far this week in terms of points in the Vegas total is Miami at the Chargers. That's a 51 total. Tua and Herbert, big game. A lot of hype on that one. That's one of the afternoon games. Bengals and Browns is 47.5. Kind of a fun game too. There's a lot of weird games this week. Not a lot of marquee games. There's a few of them. You obviously get the primetime games, but Bengals Browns, which we don't always guess is going to be one, 47.5. Only 2 games over 47. Are you all in on Dolphins Chargers, or how are you kind of attacking these high total games?
Yeah, I'm not going to be. I get it. I like that game too. I'm definitely going to have some of it, but really just because I think it's going to be by far the most popular.
Yeah,
I think it's perfectly fine to stack that game. It looks great on paper. There are plenty of other ways to get different, so I wouldn't worry about that. If you love that game, stack it up. You can get different at running back or plenty of other ways. I like some of these off the board games. I do kind of like that Cincy Cleveland game. I'll take a look at that one, but a couple other ones I'm thinking about. I like this Minnesota Tampa game.
Okay.
The Vikings games in general averaged the most combined plays last season, playing in a dome. Other things too, I really want to play Justin Jefferson. I think it's a great spot for him. And so it sort of just makes sense to stack that game. I don't think anyone's going to play the Tampa receivers. I like some other pieces on Minnesota. And I just feel good about the Vikings going up against Baker Mayfield at home, and specifically about Jefferson and their receivers now that, Cook is gone and Thielen's gone. I know they have Addison, but I just think Jefferson will become even more of a focal point, at least at the beginning of the season. So I want some exposure there. And then another game I was looking at, I don't know how I feel about this one, but I think the Jags-Colts game is interesting.
I do too.
Calvin Ridley, I have some interest in. It should just be a good spot for Jacksonville, and then you don't really know what you're going to get on the other side with Richardson starting, but he has so much rushing upside that, I'm considering him too. I don't know. What other games are you looking at?
Yeah, that middle is an interesting spot because there's 7 games that have totals between 42 and 47. Running through them real quick, we got Rams at Seattle, 46.5. Eagles and Patriots at 45. By the way, that spread seems low. That seems like a trap. I feel like Eagles -4 is just sucking me in to make a bet that I'm going to lose. Jags and Colts, 45. Tampa, Minnesota, you mentioned 45. Vegas and Denver is 44. Houston at Baltimore is 43.5, and Green Bay at Chicago is 43. So we've got this glut in the middle, and Tampa Bay, Minnesota jumped out to me too. I think that's interesting. I actually I really like Chris Godwin at the price. I think he's way, way underpriced. People don't realize how good he was last year coming off the ACL too. He is really good late in the year. So I like that game too. Jags Colts, you mentioned Anthony Richardson. That's the big X factor here. You mentioned high rushing upside. I really think his rushing upside gives him a floor too. He's always going to run for something. The passing is going to be all over the place. He had probably some good passing games, some awful passing games. He was 44% completion percentage of the preseason, which is not good. But I think he's going to run so much that gives him kind of a built-in floor. So it's interesting there. Just finishing out the slate here, we have some low totals too. We got some 4 games that are under 42. My 49ers heading into Pittsburgh, which should be a bloody battle there, 41. Panthers at Falcons, 39.5. Titans and Saints, 41. And the lowly Arizona Cardinals going into Washington at 38. I think it's fair to say maybe we just cross out Arizona for the entire season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. They look like one of the worst teams in a while, right?
Yeah, they're going when you cut Colt McCoy because he's too good. We know that the tank is fully engaged.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll obviously get into a lot of these stacks and games and stuff. I think that what you try to do with Miami and the Chargers is kind of the starting point. Because if you're going to stack any part of the game, you're going to play one of the quarterbacks. You're going to play Herbert. You're going to play Tua. You're going to play some receivers. I like getting a little different too. I will probably have some Herbert just because it's me and I always have some Herbert. But there are a lot of guys that I like. There's some cheap guys I like. Seattle and the Rams was an interesting one to me. I don't know what to expect from the Rams at all. Cooper Kupp is out. They look like they might be really bad, but they got a really good coach. They still have Matthew Stafford. If they can hang in that game at all, I really like Seattle this week. I love Geno. I love his receivers. Kenneth Walker, I liked until about 10 minutes ago when I see that he was listed with a groin injury this afternoon or this morning. I guess it's still a morning here. So I don't know what I'll do in the running back position, but I really like Seattle. I like Seattle's offense in general this year. I think that adding Jackson Smith and Jigba is just a huge add. As a 49ers fan, I was really upset that he slipped to them. But man, Geno's got weapons, and I think if they're assuming they don't have the great defense, everybody's like, oh, well, Pete Carroll likes to run the ball. Well, yeah, Pete Carroll used to have the Legion of Boom and could run the ball. They're going to, I don't know if this week's the week they're going to give up a lot of points because it's the Rams, but I think Seattle's going to get some shootouts. I like Seattle as a team to kind of focus on and stack a bunch of this year because I think they're going to get in some shootouts.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to bring up that game and specifically Seattle. I agree with everything you said. I think Geno took a big step last year. They should be good again this year. He's got all those weapons. And this game sort of just stacks up perfectly because the Rams, without Kupp, have some pretty decent options. Like you could run it back with Higbee or either of those 3K wide receivers. Yeah. We'll get into that. But yeah, it's a pretty cheap stack. And you could see Seattle Seattle sort of crushing the Rams in this game. Like you mentioned, can the Rams hang around? Yeah. But yeah, no, I have interest there too.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I kind of like Kenneth Walker, but he doesn't play or he's limited. That makes maybe even they throw the ball a little, maybe even a little more. I mean, he gets some Zach Charbonnet could be in the mix. There's a lot of pass this game. That was one of the games that was most interesting to me. But let's jump into it. Let's talk about players here. What we're here to do. But first, a note from our sponsor at Rival Fantasy. If you're looking for a place to play head-to-head fantasy football games without the huge tournaments, salary caps, or complicated game types, then Rival Fantasy is where you want to play this NFL season. From a twist on the classic game with Fantasy Bingo, where players generate a lineup to complete achievement to get bingo, to head-to-head fantasy challenges where you'll pick two players who will score the most fantasy points. This is the best of fantasy sports. For the 2023 NFL season, Rival Fantasy is offering new users a $200 deposit match plus a $25 first play voucher. Rival Fantasy is so confident you'll love the experience, they're giving you money to play out of the gate. Experience the future of fantasy sports on Rival Fantasy and become a rival today. So, Ryan, real quick before we jump into each position, is there anybody you think is we just mark them in the lineup, they're chalk this week? I think the answer is probably Washington defense, actually. I think everybody's going to play the Washington defense. They're 2,500 going against Arizona, or 2,800, sorry, going against Arizona. They may be one of the higher percentage plays this week just because I think everybody's just going to gravitate to that. And some people will try and get different. It's defense, but I think it's so easily clickable there. But any other guys you're everybody's going to have this guy. It's week one. They mispriced this guy. Is there anybody else? I didn't see as many as normal. There's a lot of mid-range receivers that I think are really playable, but there's enough of them that I think maybe the percentage get held down a little bit because there's so many to pick from. But is there anybody out there you're like, oh, everybody's going to have this guy this week?
Well, yeah, definitely Washington defense. I think, we might see them as one of the highest owned defenses ever that, everyone wants to play defense against this Arizona team. So other than that though, you're right. It's not that clear. If Judy ends up getting ruled out, Marvin Mims will be insanely popular in cash games for min price 3,000. If Judy ends up playing, I think people will look to Tutu Atwell for 3,000. I'm just talking about cash games here. People are definitely looking for a min price wide receiver. Running back. Yeah, Mostert. People like Mostert, I think, in that great game environment and basically as the number one back for the Dolphins. Jeff Wilson's out, A-Chain's just sort of getting healthy. And Mixon also, people aren't mixing for cash games at least. And it's different than last year. At first, I was like, oh, Mixon, really? But it's different than last year in that with P. Ryan gone, he's expected to be out there for a ton of third downs, especially early on. None of the Bengals running backs really emerged as the guy that's going to play third down. So if you add receiving upside in for Mixon, I think he's going to be pretty popular in cash games. But yeah, nothing crazy.
Yeah, we always the pricing comes out so early. There's always like one like super obvious running back or something like that. I don't think we quite have that. There's a lot of interesting plays, but nobody like is just a lock into your lineup. Since we were talking about him earlier, before we get into quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson is 5,600 going against Jacksonville as an underdog. Should be a good situation for a quarterback. What does one do with Anthony Richardson at 5,600? Do you think a lot of people are going to play him? Do you think everybody's going to kind of go with the more popular quarterback receiver stacks? Like how high percentage do you think we see Richardson this weekend?
I think he's going to be relatively popular in cash games. Like you mentioned, he does have a floor with that rushing, and 5,600, that's pretty good. People look for that rushing floor in cash games, and I think it's fine. So I'm considering it myself. I'm not sure if I will end up playing him. Like, it seems a little risky just based on we haven't seen it before. Well, we have seen his passing and it wasn't very good so far. But no, I don't mind it for 5,600. So yeah, I think he will be relatively popular and probably deservedly so.
Yeah, I do too. I think that the problem is there's another quarterback who's $700 cheaper than him that I think is going to be popular if someone goes cheap. So we'll get into that. But I think that's going to be the thing that's going to hold down Richardson percentages. We've got a really cheap quarterback that's in play this week. But let's talk about our favorite game stacks of the week. What quarterback receiver combos do you like here? There's the expensive Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. There's the mid-range Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa. Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith, we talked about. What are you doing here at quarterback in terms of, what's your favorite play to like, I'm going with quarterback and going receiver. Let's get going.
Yeah. I know I sort of already just jumped into it, but it feels too easy for me this week. I like Cousins and Jefferson.
All right.
I'll throw one more guy in too. Any of those other Vikings, Hawkinson, probably number one. But it just feels easy to me to start there. And part of the reason is because he'll be popular. Jefferson will be popular and the Vikings people will play them, but not overwhelmingly so. There's other spots that people are looking to. So it's really that pushes me onto it more.
He's not going to be, I don't think Cousins will be popular at all.
No. Well, he'll be, not too popular, but like in the middle. I don't know. Like
there's just so many. He's right in the same pricing with Geno and Lawrence and Tua and Herbert. Like they're all in the 6,000s. I don't think Cousins will be that high.
Okay, so the reason I say he will be sort of middling is because on two projection sites I'm looking at, he's ranking second behind Anthony Richardson in terms of value. Wow. So people will see that.
That surprises me.
I think people like this matchup and they like the fact that the Vikings run a ton of plays and there's just like points and yards to be had. Where it feels sort of safe, can you see Tampa controlling this game?
Not really, but that
the Vikings defense is really bad. The Vikings defense is really bad, but
the second half of the year, every Vikings game seemed like it was a crazy shootout. It was great for offense. I don't know. It's just I don't know if Tampa could do enough. But yeah, you're right. I just think it's Kirk Cousins. I think people be like, I don't want to play Kirk Cousins. Like I don't mean that.
No, you're right.
Your Jefferson point is true though. Like I think the fact is I want to play Jefferson to just pair him with his quarterback. But I'd be surprised if Cousins is second highest. I'll just put it that way.
No, yeah, I don't think he'll be second highest, but I think he'll be around 10% or whatever.
So I wouldn't mind that. I think he's a good play. I think it's a really good matchup. I like that too. But if that makes Trevor Lawrence at 6,500 and Geno at 6,100 a little less popular, I think that's great too. What do you think about Lawrence? This is another game where can the other team come back? We talked about Anthony Richardson on the other side. Can Indy push Jacksonville enough to make this interesting? Because Lawrence is 6,500, had a on fire second half of the season last year. They were 2-6, and then Lawrence caught fire and he seemed like something clicked. He was really good the second half. He adds Calvin Ridley. You mentioned earlier as someone's coming back. He hasn't played in almost 2 years, and he's 6,500. So he's pretty cheap. You got Christian Kirk. You got Evan Ingram. They got a lot of weapons there you can pair with Lawrence. I like Lawrence at the price. 6,500 seems like really good. It's just a matter of trying to figure out if Indy can get to like 17 to push Jacksonville. So they're throwing in the second half.
No, we're on the same page. Yeah, I almost mentioned Cousins. I almost mentioned Lawrence. Yeah, definitely like him. I think Jacksonville stacks up great. It's not that Ridley's not that expensive. Neither is Kirk. Evan Ingram is even sort of interesting just because of the tight end position this week. And yeah, I don't even know that Indy necessarily needs to push them. Obviously, it would be nice, but I think Lawrence could throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in, a comfortable win.
Yeah.
And that'd be great for 6,500. So yeah, I'm in on Lawrence for sure.
It feels like this range is going to be this range entirely is going to be popular. Geno, Cousins, Lawrence, the Miami Charger quarterbacks. So what does this make? What do you think happens with these two top guys? We got Lamar at 8,000, really good matchup against Houston. Another game we're like, all right, can Houston do enough? We got a rookie quarterback. They're a big home favorite, but new offense coordinator there. He added Zay Flowers. He adds Odell Beckham. There was a point last year where he was hurt a lot of the year. The weapons were lacking. We got Lamar. We got Jalen Hurts at 7,800. Obviously, Super Bowl loser, but awesome season. He's got weapons galore. He's got AJB. He's got Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert's healthy. Always a huge ceiling on Hurts, but it feels to me we mentioned 5 guys in 6,000 we think are very playable. People are going to go to. Does this mean that nobody has Lamar and Hurts?
Yeah. I wouldn't say nobody, but I think you're on the right track. I think they're going a bit overlooked, and it's understandable. Paying $8,000 for Lamar, can Houston push them? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then with Hurts, at least on paper, it looks like not the greatest matchup in that, New England has a decent defense and, they'd like to slow the game down. So yeah, I do think people will be off those two. They'll probably be less than 10% owned, and there'll be some opportunity there.
If I had to pick between them, I'd go Lamar. I think your points on Hurts are really good. I think that New England's got a good defense. Belichick's going to do everything he can to muck this game up. And then I think the New England offense sucks. So there's like a combo of like a bunch of things there that I love Jalen Hurts. I love watching Jalen Hurts. I just don't think this is the week I'm going to pay up for Jalen Hurts. There'll be plenty of weeks I'm wanting to pay up for Jalen Hurts. I just don't think this is going to be that week. But I think Lamar is really interesting. I'm curious what this offense is going to look like with Todd Monken in there, the new offensive coordinator. Getting Greg Roman out is a good thing. As a 49ers fan, I can promise you that's a good thing. Nobody wants that. But he's 8,000. We mentioned the receivers. He's got Rashad Bateman looking good. He's got Zay Flowers, who looks good as a good-looking rookie. We mentioned Odell Beckham, Mark Andrews. He's got a little bit of a quad thing, but it sounds like he's going to play. If Houston, it's just a matter of Houston can get some points, because I think Baltimore's going to open it up. I think Baltimore's going to look really good. I think Baltimore is the obvious survivor pick this week. Not breaking ground. I think they're going to be massively owned in Survivor. They're the biggest favorite, and they just lines up well. It's at home. I really like Lamar this week. If I'm paying up, that's where I'm going.
Higher than Commanders in Survivor?
I think higher than Commanders in Survivor.
Wow.
Okay. It's a good point, though, because I think if you're going to play Washington, it's this week, right?
This is the time, right?
Yeah, you're right. They'll probably be pretty close. I say that. I think they'll probably both be right up there. I just, I know it's hard to click Washington in week 1. You're just like, do I really want to risk week 1 on Washington? But I think everybody's going to want to play against Arizona. But those might be close. I'm going to go Baltimore a little bit higher. But
yeah, no, you sold me on Baltimore, though. You sold me. I was sort of on the fence, but they do have some nice pieces. Zay Flowers being 4K, and just the fact that Andrews can outscore the entire tight end position. Yeah. I don't necessarily mind running it back with even somebody like Pierce, with the reports that he's going to be playing most of the third downs, and, it wasn't really Singletary, and he's cheap. You could play Nico Collins. I don't know. Yeah, I could get behind that stack.
Yeah, you just hope it's not 20-0 at halftime is the only risk in here, is that, and right. Obviously they won't shut Lamar down, but they'll just be like, yeah, you're not running. We're gonna hand the ball off to Dobbins a bunch and kind of go from there. I don't even know what to expect from Dobbins. Like, there's so many like weird situations here where guys didn't play in the preseason, and we don't know if they're fully healthy or they're just kind of holding them back. There's I don't know if Dobbins is going to get 12 carries or 26 carries. Like, it's a weird. We can't figure it out. And he looked good last year, but was still kind of limping. Like, he looked good in terms of stats, but like running the ball, like, you're like, is that really J.K. Dobbins? So there's just like, there are 3 or 4, and we saw it last night with Gibbs, same kind of thing. Like, we didn't know if Gibbs was going to get 20 touches or 4. It turned out to be, 9 or 8? But he looked really good. He was 6 yards a carry, but Montgomery had 21 carries. There's so many situations like that. It's why I make week 1. Like, we don't fully know what guys are going to look like out the gate. And sometimes some teams take it easy on guys. Some teams hand the ball to David Montgomery 21 times. And we're gonna find out a lot this week.
Yep, exactly. Embrace the uncertainty.
Yeah, it is. It does. It makes it fun. Week one's always really fun to watch, although it can be frustrating at times. You're like, "Where's that player? Why is he not getting the ball?" But in terms of the one last question in quarterbacks here, and then we're going to get to the cheap guy. Chargers Dolphins. If you do play this game, do you have a preference in going with Herbert and his receivers, or Tua and his receivers and coming back? Obviously, there's so many options this game. Whether it be just coming back with an expensive receiver, coming back with a cheap receiver. There's a lot of different ways to go in this game. You come back with Mostert if you played the Chargers quarterback. But do you have a lean for which way you'd go if you had to pick one side here in terms of the quarterback?
Yeah, I think I'd lean Herbert, mostly just because I think the Chargers are going to win. I think I like that they're healthier on both sides of the ball now. And I also like the price tag on Mike Williams, and I don't think he's going to be overly popular. So, yeah, I think Herbert. I would go Herbert, Mike Williams, and then run it back with someone on the Dolphins. What about you?
You kind of answered it for me. I love Keenan Allen, but man, Mike Williams just priced better this week, and I think Quentin Johnston is going to be a guy at some point this year. I just don't think it's going to be week one. Unfortunately, I think that he might even be the fourth receiver now. He's their star rookie out of TCU that they drafted. But I think like if you're going to play Mike Williams, you play him earlier in the year before Johnston really kind of steps up and gets more involved in the offense. People everybody thinks Justin Herbert was bad last year, and he was bad, maybe bad for Justin Herbert, but they were hurt all year long. If you look at stats, he was still really, really, really good when both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were playing. I know that was not very often, but they were still really good when those guys played. I mean, it was hard. He just didn't have his weapons all year. I think he was hurt all year too. He had that rib injury, was it week 2 or week 3? And you're like, oh, you need to sit for a couple weeks, and he didn't. He just kept playing. I think we're gonna see a different Justin Herbert, a new offense coordinator. Everything sounds exciting there. I've probably said 4,000 years in a row that I'm excited about the Chargers on the first podcast of the year, but I'm actually excited about the Chargers this year. So by week 4, I'll be like, what am I doing? They just lost another close game, but they're the team I kind of pull for in the AFC, but I'd go Herbert too. Tua was really bad last year against the Chargers. I don't know what you could take from that, but he was horrible in that game. I think he was 10 for 28 or something really awful. But it's a great game script. You got Tyreek and Waddle on the Dolphins side that are obviously fun, electric, exciting, both really, really good. Should be a fun game on a fast turf in the, I know it's not a dome in LA, but it's got a roof and you have no weather concerns. This game should be a lot of fun. Let's jump into the one cheap quarterback that I think is going to make this an interesting slate. We talked about Richardson. We talked about the Commanders and Cardinals. We have Sam Howell at 4,900, getting a lot of buzz in the preseason too. He's won the job. He's another guy who can run a little bit too, so you kind of have a little bit of built-in floor. But I think you just go with the fact that the Arizona defense is going to be horrible. Washington's favored in this game. They're at home. He's 4,900 on DraftKings. He's got some interesting pieces too. If Terry McLaurin plays, you got that. Plus, Jahan Dotson is super hyped right now in drafts and really cheap in DFS right now. Are you venturing under 5,000 this week with running back? Gets you some really nice receivers in on the other side. Sam Howell, 4,900. What say you?
Yeah, I might. I'm not I think there's a lot of value at wide receiver and even some at running back to where Howell won't end up as popular as he might be on another slate. But I still like him if you want to jam in expensive running back and expensive receiver. You mentioned obviously it's a great matchup. I don't know how much Arizona can push Washington, but they don't really need to for 4,500.
Yeah.
I have some interest for tournaments because, pairing him with Dotson, I think makes a lot of sense. I don't know what to think about McLaurin. Doesn't even have an injury designation anymore. So I guess, I don't know. You mentioned, all the preseason stuff. I drafted 200 best ball teams this summer, and towards the end, Dotson was going way ahead of McLaurin in every draft. And I mean, that doesn't look too good to me right now.
As someone who waits to draft, it was disappointing because Dotson was one of my favorite guys, and then he just kept moving up, and I'm like, oh, he's everybody's favorite guy, so I can't really take credit for that. But I love Dotson myself. I'm definitely going to play some Howell. I think that it really helps you build a lot of other stuff. Your point on value is correct. There's a lot of guys you can play, but I think there's a couple of guys when we get to receivers that nobody's going to have that are expensive. I think that Howell kind of unlocks some of those guys. And I think everybody's going to be like, oh, I can play one expensive receiver. I'll play Jefferson. I think there's it makes it for really some interesting leverage in the expensive receiver pool. If you do have a Howell, you can play 2 of these guys, or you can play a couple of these guys and no one's going to play. That I think becomes pretty spicy, interesting. But let's get into some other positions. We'll start at running back. But first, a note from our sponsors at Bettor Vision. I think we can all agree that fantasy sports are awesome. So is daily fantasy and sports betting. That's why we have so many friggin' accounts. What's not awesome is go to a bunch of different apps to find the best odds and manage all your fantasy lineups. Enter Bettor Vision. That's Bettor, Bettor Vision. Bettor Vision is the only app that syncs all your fantasy, DFS, and sportsbook accounts into one place. We only show you with the best odds for every bet you're going to make, so you always get the best value. And our dashboard is the only one-stop shop to track all your fantasy matchups, DFS picks, and bets. Visit bettorvision.us to download Bettor Vision today. By the way, that sounds like a really fantastic idea. I'm definitely going to check that out because there's definitely, I know a lot of people who play way too many leagues. I'm not pointing at myself, that could really get a good place to kind of get that all centralized. So that's really cool. That's a cool setup. Expensive running back is interesting this week. I don't feel like there's anybody that was like, oh my gosh, I got to play this guy this week. But let's jump into it. We got Austin Eckler's 8,400, Christian McCaffrey's 8,700, Nick Chubb 8,200, Bijan Robinson, aforementioned rookie 8,000, Derrick Henry 7,800, and I'll stop with Josh Jacobs 7,700. As I was working on this last night and yesterday and looking at stuff, I don't see anybody that really jumps off the page to me in this group. I can kind of make a case for everybody. I can make a case against everybody. Do you have an expensive running back that you're like, yeah, that's the guy I want this week?
Nope. I'm with you 100%. And because of that, pretty much just going to let ownership dictate what I do. Also, I'm just not going to spend up too much at running back this week, but on the few lineups that I do, I kind of like Nick Chubb in that he's going to be the least popular out of all 7 of these backs, everybody from Ramondre and up. So 7K and up. Chubb is expected to be the least popular. And I just thought, he could outscore that range. If the Browns are going to win this game, it's probably on the back of Chubb. In the same matchup last year, he had 100 plus yards and 2 touchdowns, 28 fantasy points, I think. So yeah, and I think it also makes sense if you want to play Chase or if you want to play Higgins or Burrow or whatever. So yeah, I have a little bit of interest in Chubb. I think Eckler will probably be the most popular just because he's in that popular game. And that makes sense too. I don't know. What do you think about this range?
It's tough. I mean, Miami was really good against the run last year. I know that, Eckler catches so many passes. I think that I'm kind of in the mindset that the Chargers spread it out around a little more. I mean, Eckler the volume was so crazy last year because they had so many injuries. It's a weird range. Like, what do you think about Bijan Robinson? These 8,000. Do you think we're getting like out the gate bell cow Bijan Robinson 20 touches? We have like Tyler Algier, like they mentioned, is like they're going to be getting some work too. Atlanta led the NFL last year in rushing yards and yards per carry. Like they are a really, really good team running the ball. And now you add this unbelievable talent from Texas that, I just don't know. I don't have a good feel if he's going to get 27 touches or 16. And I think that makes a difference. If he's going to 27 touches, I want him all day in this game against Carolina. I think that's he's indoors. He's at home. They're favored, but, close enough that it should be back and forth. I'd love Bijan Robinson, but there's that little thing in me right now. It's like, well, what if he gets 16 touches and Algier gets 12?
Yeah, I was hoping you'd have that answer.
I don't know if anybody really has that. I'd ask Arthur Smith, but I'm not sure Arthur Smith has that answer either. Looking at his Kyle Pitts usage last year, I don't know if he has any answers on offense.
Yeah, you're right, though. 20 plus touches from Bijan, and he would be the back I would play in this range for sure. But I think everyone has that concern, and that's the reason he's maybe not projecting quite as high. So I think Bijan makes sense just because he does have that upside if it goes right for him. And yeah, he's not going to be crazy popular this week at all. So I think it's a good gamble.
Yeah, I think he'd be my 1 in here, and Chubb would be my 2. My feelings on Christian McCaffrey as a human being and football player are very high. I worry this week, 8,700. He didn't play at all in the preseason. 1, he's fresh, but 2, I think they're going to ease him in. There's been a lot of talk about, it's early, not wanting to use him too much. And they did not lean on him when in games where Elijah Mitchell was healthy. He got leaned on last year when Mitchell was out, and they needed to lean on him. I think that Elijah Mitchell is really good. He's injury prone, but he's really, really good, especially in this system. He's very effective. People forget how good he's been when he's been healthy. I'm not saying it's a timeshare by any means. Don't quote me in saying that, but I think Mitchell gets enough enough carries and touches when he's healthy that Christian McCaffrey 8,700 on the road in the morning again on a really high price against a really good defense in Pittsburgh. I think they'll be good with TJ Watt back. They're a different defense with TJ Watt when he plays, and he's healthy right now. I'm not paying 8,700 for McCaffrey. He can go off in any game, but I just don't like the setup here enough to do it.
Nope, I'm with you. I think, he would have to get there on 3 touchdowns maybe or something like that.
Yeah, he could obviously bust one. There's so many ways where Christian McCaffrey could do great things. He's just really expensive, and I just think, I think it's not going to be full workload this week. We'll get there probably. Mitchell will get hurt at some point, but I don't think I can go there. I can get pay up. So I think got Bijan and Chubb in this range. It's going to be it's interesting because Bijan's definitely fun, but there's a little bit of question mark. But I think even if he gets maybe a few lesser touches, I think the explosiveness is there. He's going to bust a couple big plays. Atlanta knows how to run the ball. I joke about Arthur Smith with Kyle Pitts, but Arthur Smith knows how to run the ball, run scheme concepts and all that. They're really good at what they do. I mean, they didn't have a quarterback last year. Mariota was not good. They still led the NFL in rushing yards. It's really impressive.
Mm-hmm. What
about mid-range running backs? You mentioned Ramondre, kind of an expensive ones. I had him down here, but it doesn't really matter. It's kind of the same thing. He's 7,000. ATN 6,900. I'm not going to list them all in here, but Kenneth Walker, we mentioned a little bit of a groin injury right now. He's 6,000. What do you do in the mid range here? Say 5,500 above. Because I want to stay with Mostert for a little bit for the cheaper ones. 5,500 above. It seems to me there's a lot of guys in here. Nobody really jumped out to me. It's a weird week where there's a lot of running back options, but nobody seems super obvious. Who do you like in the mid range?
Yeah, no one stands out too much. I had some interest in Walker, just like you said. And then, then it's sort of weird. He's limited with this groin injury and he didn't play all preseason. So I'm not really sure.
How do you feel about Travis Etienne? 6,900 and a good matchup against Indy. Where do you fall on him coming to the start of the year?
Yeah, everyone just seemed to be off Etienne, right? All summer and on Bigsby. I don't know. I think he's interesting in this matchup. Like, why can't he run for 100 plus and 2 scores? Or
I think he actually will. I don't know, 2 scores. I think he will. He had 1,400 total yards last year. I feel like everybody kind of thinks he was kind of quiet. 1,400 total yards. The problem is the catches. I don't think he had more than 3 catches in a game all last year. You just hope if you can just get 5 or 6 targets a week, that'd be huge. But they've got a lot of weapons now. They added Calvin Ridley. But I like ATN. This is a game where they should win the game. It is a road game, but indoors, fast track in Indy. Among these guys, ATN was the guy that I do like. 6,900. I think he's going to have a really good year. I think people forget how explosive and talented he actually is. He was kind of he was good last year, but not didn't jump off the page. I really like him at 6,900 this week.
Yep. Yeah, I do too. And he's not going to be that popular. And you're right. Someone on Jacksonville, at least one guy should have a really good game in this spot.
Yeah. They're good. They're going to score points. Where it comes from is a question, but I think they're definitely going to score points.
The same thing I'll say about the next 2 guys. If Jefferson and Cousin, if they don't smash, it's probably because Madison has 2 touchdowns. So, I get if somebody like Madison, same with Dobbins. You mentioned all the uncertainty with Dobbins, but it's such a good spot where you're not going to be shocked at all if he has 20 carries for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then I kind of like Aaron Jones just because the Packers have the best O-line versus D-line matchup of any team this week, in that the Bears, I think they have the 31st ranked D-line and a bad run defense, and the Packers have Bakhtiari back healthy and still one of the better O-lines. So, I wasn't going to be on Jones really at all, but just from the numbers, it should be a good spot for the Packers to run the ball. And maybe they want to do that, with this being Jordan Love's sort of debut as the starter.
You're the Packers fan here. How do you feel about Jordan Love entering 2023?
I hate to say it, but I'm more of a Jets fan this year.
Did I mess that up?
No. You did not mess it up.
You're moving with Rodgers for right now. Then
I'm moving with Rodgers for right now. Yeah. I'm still a Packer fan.
The team gets Hard Knocks and you just jump on board.
Yeah, well, I think I think Rodgers sort of got a raw deal in Green Bay, and I was always a huge fan.
I get it. I have a Chiefs hat somewhere in my house when Montana went there too. So I do get it. I can't do it anymore because the Chiefs beat us in the Super Bowl. But yeah, I get it. Like the beloved player moving on. The Jets should be fun. But do you think Love's going to be good? How do you? I mean,
of course, I'm still a Packer fan. Right. Also, I'm not sure what to think about Love. I guess what I'll say is I'm not quite as high on him as some other people.
There are some people who are pretty fired up about the preseason.
Yeah,
how good he is.
I could be wrong. I'm just not sure he has the accuracy to throw the downfield passes. Yeah, we'll see. I'm rooting for him. I don't know.
Here's hoping your rookie first round draft pick works out better than ours did.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Good point. You guys traded Lance to the Cowboys. That was interesting.
I think they had to. I think they had to move on.
I think it was the right move too. Yeah. Too many distractions.
Everybody really liked the guy, but I don't think anybody really liked the football player, which is
too bad.
It is. I hope he gets a chance in Dallas. It's a long way off, and they've got a good backup quarterback there too. But
you guys could have had Justin Fields, I think, right?
Could have had Micah Parsons. That might have been worked out better.
Okay. That might have. Yeah. Okay.
It's if you want to make yourself ill, look at the non-quarterbacks taken after Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. It's an insane list of like really, really good players. It's they were always a quarterback though, so that's like it's a big what if there. But then it's just it's hard. Fields is the answer because I don't. By the way, I'd rather have I wouldn't want Mac Jones. People are like, oh, you should take him. I think Mac Jones is terrible, so I wouldn't want that either. But
Purdy's better than Mac Jones.
Purdy's better than Mac Jones. There's no doubt about that. I like that you said that. Madison is the one that's interesting to me. He's this hard thing to figure out because he's so inefficient, and all the advanced stat models hate Alexander Madison. But the volume might really be there. They've got some Ty Chandler. They've got I forget they signed a veteran. I can't remember who it was. But who they signed as veteran?
I
want to say Kenyon Drake, but I knew that was wrong.
No, the guy from Miami.
Gaskin? Miles Gaskin. That's it. I always mix up him and Kenyon Drake. But they don't really have anybody there. It's a really good matchup. They're home as a favorite. He's so inefficient, but if he touches the ball 22 times, he's gonna put us some stats. So he's a hard guy to figure out because at some point volume is most important here. If he gets a lot of touches, there's so many people that don't like him. I don't think he's going to be that high percentage, even though the situation's really perfect. He's a tough one for me to figure out because I don't think he's very good, but I'm not sure that really matters in a situation like this.
Man, everybody says that.
I know, everybody does. Yeah,
I mean, there's just so much Madison slander. I know because I actually have a decent amount in best ball. I mean, he just kept falling, and
I think that makes sense. I think it makes sense.
I hope so. It seems like his path to 20 plus touches is just pretty easy. That's really all there is to it. I know he's just a guy, but he's a guy playing in a pretty good offense without other running backs, at least as of now.
He kind of falls in. He kind of gets lumped in with Rachaad White too, who was really inefficient last year for Tampa. I don't think Rachaad White works this week because they're 6-point dogs on the road against Minnesota. But you mentioned Minnesota's defense was terrible at the end of the year last year, so he might be in the mix. But that kind of segues me into the cheaper running backs. White's 5,500. Raheem Mostert, you mentioned earlier, kind of part of this big game. Jeff Wilson Jr. is out. Shocker there. 49 running backs getting hurt. I can't imagine that never happens. But Mostert's 5,400. The Chargers were the dead worst run D in the NFL last year. This is obviously a new year, new defensive players, new stuff, but they were the dead worst defensive run defense last year. Mostert was hurt last year, but still ran for almost 5 yards a carry. When he plays, he's electric. He's fast. There's a couple clips of him. He was the fastest sprint speed a couple years ago and that run against the Jets that he later got hurt in that game too. But you got Mostert, you got Rachaad White. I think Mostert would be way more popular, way more interesting. And then you've got the two Commanders running backs. You've got Antonio Gibson's 5,200, Brian Robinson's 5,100. Again, we mentioned this game, great matchup against Arizona. I assume Robinson's the one people have more interested in just because they're a favorite. And, Gibson's probably the third down catching passes kind of guy. Robinson's the, run the ball with a lead kind of guy. Obviously a year off from his, time where he got shot. So maybe more healthy than he was last year. Great matchup. What are you doing down here in the 5,000 range?
Yeah, I think Mostert, he looks like a pretty good play, right? Yeah. I don't know if I'm putting too much stock into this, but what really sold it for me was he caught 8 passes in week 17 last year. And I remember just Tua willing to dump it down to him. And I'd never really thought of Mostert, with too much receiving upside, but yet, for 5,400, he's just going to be on the field so much. And you mentioned he's actually pretty good when he's healthy. And the Chargers,
he's very good with healthy.
Yeah.
You just hope you don't see him limping out of the pile in the first quarters.
I remember him torching the Packers, and I was like, this guy is tough and he's fast. So yeah, and you mentioned the Chargers were pretty bad against the run. So yeah, I mean, Mostert in cash games, I'm almost certainly going to do that. I mean, he's in my cash game lineup right now. For tournaments, yeah, you mentioned the guy, and, I don't want to oversell it, but to me, Brian Robinson Jr. just looks like a smash play on this slate. I mean, it's actually the reason, it's the reason that I just won't have quite as much Howell.
Yeah.
Is just because of that. Like I was on Robinson in that I'm targeting this matchup for the Commanders against Arizona. It's not going to be a better matchup than this. If you're telling me a running back is going to get 20 plus carries against the worst team in football and he's only 5,100, how is he not a great play? You know what I mean?
I think he is. I think the only thing keeping him not insanely popular is that Mostert's right there. I think that they're going to eat some of each other's popularity, but I mean, you can't get a better spot. He's 5,100. That is insanely cheap for a running back on DraftKings, and he should get a lot of work. I can't disagree with you at all. I think that Robinson, I agree with you. Robinson, the only reason when maybe I don't play Howell, it's because I probably have Robinson. I obviously don't want to play both of them, but I think that this whole game is cheap. This matchup is perfect. You never get a better matchup for Washington. Robinson 5,100 and Mostert 5,400. I think is the way to go here, and I think they are far and away above anybody else in this range.
Yep, I'm with you. And what do you think about playing Gibson with Howell? Maybe Gibson, Howell, and one receiver. Is that viable? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty fascinating. I think you go Gibson, Howell, and Dotson. They're all under 5,200. Like that, you can pretty much do anything you want in the rest of your lineup. You have to hope that Arizona does a little bit because for them to, I just don't think. I don't know how much Gibson. If they're up 17-3, I think that Gibson kind of becomes a little bit irrelevant. Unfortunately, I think Antonio Gibson's really good. I like him this year. I just don't love him for this one. Eric Bieniemy is the new offensive coordinator there, and the talk is he just uses Gibson like Jerick McKinnon, catching a bunch of touchdown passes. But I think that's great when they're playing Dallas and Philly and they're down and catching up in the fourth quarter. I worry this matchup is just a lot of.
You're exactly right. Gibson he's going to have a ton of fourth quarter receptions in games when the Commanders are losing. So
I'm going to really like him at a cheap price in a lot of those games. But he's got a lot of work in second halves against Dallas and Philly and maybe the Giants, that sort of thing.
Yep, and this is probably not that game. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd lean. I mean, he can hit a big play, but I think I'd lean Robinson pretty heavy in that one. But that's another good segue into wide receivers. Since we're talking about receiving, first enough from our sponsors at Vivid Seats. Football is back. Kick off the NFL season with Vivid Seats and score tickets to all the hottest matchups and biggest games of the year. Catch every pass, every tackle, and every heart-pounding play of your favorite team live and in person. And with Vivid Seats rewards, now you earn rewards with every single purchase. Each ticket you buy gets you closer to your reward. Just buy 10 tickets and simply cash in your credit towards your 11th ticket purchase. It's that easy. Plus, Vivid Seats is offering $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase with code RotoWire. That's code RotoWire, ROTOWIRE. From the 50-yard line to the upper deck, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2023 games that matter to you. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. So, Ryan, expensive receivers. We talked a lot about Justin Jefferson. Really good setup here. I guess he's 8,800. Tyreek is 8,200, and his teammate Jalen Waddle 7,100. Jamar Chase, you mentioned before, is 8,100. Devontae Adams 7,900. AJ Brown 76. Keenan Allen down here in the low sevens. Devontae Smith to DK Metcalf. That's the range from 7,000 up to the top. I know you like Jefferson the most. Who else do you like in this range? Maybe if you play a second expensive receiver or a lineup without JJ.
Yeah, and I think you can play two expensive receivers. Yeah. Relatively easy this week. So I'll have some lineups like that. I don't know, Scott. I really like Chase. I really like Hill. I mean, all these guys are so good and their ceilings are so high in just about any spot. I mean, I've heard people say, it might be a tough matchup for Chase and the Bengals. he had 10 catches on 15 targets against Cleveland last season.
I think Jamar Chase just kills me. There's no matchup that he does.
Right, exactly. Obviously, I like Tyreek, especially if you're stacking the Chargers. He makes so much sense. I don't know. So yeah, those two are my favorite, I guess. I guess I was sort of off of Adams and Brown. Maybe you can talk me into them. I don't know. What do you think about that range?
So you're gonna think I'm a little bit crazy. You talked earlier about this is the week where you can really get some guys nobody's playing.
Yes,
I think Devontae Adams is the guy this week that no one is going to play. I don't think anybody wants this matchup against Denver. Good cornerback on the other side. The cornerback Patrick Surtain Jr. was actually talking smack yesterday. They said, "How do you think about this Devontae Adams matchup?" He said, "Who?" Like. He's got Jimmy Garoppolo, and I get it. Jimmy's not. I lived with Jimmy for these last however many years, but Jimmy can be accurate in the mid range. I think this can be really good with Adams. Devontae Adams had 180 targets last year. Like they are just going to feed the crap out of Devontae Adams. I think nobody's going to play him. 7,900. I think this is going to be an okay back and forth game. Like I think that Denver should be able to score on the Raiders here. Russell Wilson was horrible last year, but he's got Marvin Mims this year. Javonte Williams should be healthy. I think Denver can put up enough. I just think Adams getting a ton of targets is obviously insanely talented. You're a Packers fan. You know the talent there. There's nobody needs to say that, but I don't think anybody's going to play him. I think everybody's going to play Jefferson. Everybody's going to play the Miami receivers. Everyone's going to play Keenan Allen. Everybody's going to play Jamar Chase. I think Devontae Adams slips through this week at a really low percentage. In a DFS, where I can get a stud player in a matchup I don't hate, I think that's a time to play him because I don't think anybody's going to have Adams. And I really love Devontae this week at 7,900. I think it's a price where it's expensive enough. People will stay away. Nobody needs to play him. Everybody hates Garoppolo. I really like Devontae this week. I didn't expect to when I kind of started my research, but I think he's a really, really good play in DFS.
Yeah, I think those are all fantastic points. I think you might have convinced me, to be honest. I'm not just saying that. I'm looking at the projected ownership right now, and
I see you have all those numbers. Like how low we're talking here.
I mean, I see Hill actually. I see Tyreek Hill as the highest by quite a bit, like 27, maybe 30% in the end.
Makes sense because everybody's stacking that game. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I see Adams. He's going to be under 10 and maybe even significantly lower than that in some single entry stuff like that.
I don't think it's crazy if yours turns where he's like 3 to 4%.
I think you're right. Yeah. I'm on board, especially because I might play a Denver wide receiver as well. So yeah.
You and me both. I think there's Denver receivers to play. I just maybe I just can't quit watching number 10 play quarterback. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I like that. Those are good points.
And I think you're gonna see a little bit different. You're not gonna talk about the deep ball to Devontae here. I think Jimmy, the one thing Jimmy does not do well is throw the deep ball. That's been chronicled many times, especially on the outside. But like these quick routes and stuff to get Devontae the ball in space, he's really good at that. I mean, their yards after catch were always really good in San Francisco. You just get the ball in Debo's hands and go. And he's gonna do that with Devontae. I just think when you get studs that nobody has that are healthy, I just think that's when you play guys. I just think that I really like Devontae this week. It's more of just a deep DFS percentage play than anything else. But I think everything kind of lines up well for him to be really good, and I like him a lot in this range.
Yeah, good call.
If I were to go Miami receiver, I'd actually go Jalen Waddle. I think I'd save the $1,100. I love both these guys. I will never say anything. I mean, Tyreek had 1,700 yards last year. The dude is awesome, but Waddle's really, really good. He missed the whole preseason. The only concern, but he practiced fully yesterday, practiced fully this week, so he looks fully good to go. Saving 1,100, I think actually matters here. I think I go Waddle over Tyreek in my lineups.
Again, I'm with you.
What about the mid-range? I think this is a gigantic spot this week to find mid-range receivers. There are so many guys in here, and there's so many really good players in here, too. It's not like we're like, this guy might be all right. We've got a lot of big names here. Guys who are drafted early. Chris Olave, Calvin Ridley, T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Debo Samuel's 5,500 this week. There are so many guys in kind of the 5,000 to 6,800 range. How are you parsing through this range? How are you figuring guys to play? Who are your favorite guys, et cetera?
It's tough. Yeah, I think the guy I really, like the most is probably Ridley. We mentioned him. We like Lawrence. It's a good spot. Obviously, other people feel the same way, so Ridley will be popular in that range. I think Olave is interesting. The one guy I was going to mention is sort of the same reason, or one of the reasons you were talking about with Devontae, and it's a guy that just nobody's going to play. Nobody's going to play T. Higgins. Yeah. And I think he makes sense. Yeah, I mean, for a lot of reasons. We've seen him put up a big ceiling. I was just looking at last year. He put up over 25 fantasy points, and every one of them was in a tough road matchup. And, that's what we have here. And I'm just seeing he's going to be 3% owned or something. So I don't know. Like it's sort of in the same vein as playing Waddle instead of Tyreek. You play Higgins instead of Chase. I don't know. What do you think about this range? Who do you like in here?
I like a ton of guys. It's a really good range. It's a fun range. I mean, you mentioned T. Higgins, like he's a second, third turn draft pick in season long leagues too. Like he's really good. 6,800. I love Olave here. He's home against Tennessee, 6,500. I'll go ahead and say this is the lowest he's gonna be priced all year long. I don't think he gets under 6,500 again the rest of the year. He had 1,000 yards as a rookie. Tennessee was really bad against receivers last year. He's got Derek Carr now. There's a quarterback upgrade. I don't love Derek Carr, but he's a quarterback upgrade from Andy Dalton or whatever they were throwing out there last year. So Olave at 6,500. I would say in a normal week, like he's going to be whatever huge, massive, percent ownership. But there's so many names. You mentioned Ridley's the same price. I think that helps there too. I love Chris Godwin too. 5,900 for Godwin. He had 104 catches last year off the ACL injury. I get it. The quarterback situation is a mess. He doesn't have Tom Brady anymore, but like, was Tom Brady really Tom Brady last year? I'd argue that probably he really wasn't. Baker Mayfield. The thing with Baker, like, I'm not going to argue that he's good, but I think he's not horrible for receivers. Kind of in that Jameis Winston mold where like he's going to make some bad decisions, but like, all right, give me a bad decision to my receiver in a one-on-one spot and take a risk. Like, I don't care if he throws an interception. I care that he throws the ball back to Godwin the next time too and takes another risk. Like, I like that for a receiver. We always like that with Jameis. Like there was weeks when Jameis was in Tampa, you're like, I want to play these guys because he's going to throw the ball at them a bunch. I think we get that this week too. They're at Minnesota. They should be trailing. I really like Godwin this week. I'm a play there 5,900, and then Debo feels really, really cheap. The matchup against Pittsburgh's tough, but 5,500 for Debo is like, I saw that and I just assumed it was 6,500. I thought I typoed it when I did it, and I read back. I'm like, he's actually 5,500. He had a lot of target share with Brock Purdy last year. I know that everybody talks about the fact that Kittle had a lot of the touchdowns, but Debo had a really good target share. Debo's really in shape this year too. He was out of shape all last year. He admits it. Like, I'm not fat shaming Debo Samuel by any means, but he admits last year, like, the contract stuff messed me up. I wasn't in shape. I didn't work out. He looks absolutely ripped. He was sending Kyle Shanahan pictures of him shirtless all offseason. And Kyle said, I've never received that many shirtless pictures from a man before. Shanahan's going to draw up plays for Debo. There are plays that he's not going to run the ball like he did in the past with Mitchell healthy and with C-Mac back there. But Kyle will make sure he gets the ball in space a couple of times. And when that happens, you can do anything. Pittsburgh's defense is tough, and I think Debo at 5,500 is super playable too.
Oh yeah, me too. And yet it's not going to be sneaky. Everybody, he's in cash consideration this week. You mentioned that the price tag is just crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Couldn't believe when I saw 5,500. Yeah, you said it. I mean, I really like Debo this week, considering him in cash. And then, like, just to piggyback a little bit on Tampa, I love Godwin. Of course, I'm stacking that Vikings game, so he makes perfect sense. Yeah. And you're absolutely right about Baker Mayfield. Doesn't matter what you think of him about a quarterback. For DFS, like, you'd much rather have Baker Mayfield throwing your guy the ball than Richardson or these other types of, like, he can at least complete passes, and especially playing from behind. So that was going to bring me to mention Mike Evans. And that's only because I think he's probably maybe the lowest owned guy in that whole range, like 2-3% or something. And I just mentioned it.
Nobody wants to click Mike Evans.
No, you can't. Like, I wouldn't mention it if it wasn't just for the fact that I'm in Viking stacks. I don't know.
No, I think it makes sense. I mean, 6,300. He's more expensive than Godwin, so everybody's going to like click Godwin instead. I just think that in DFS, it's a really good situation. I know that, as long, you want to make sure Evans is healthy. I know he's been listed with the concussional tag, but I think he's going to play. I mean, nobody wants to click Mike Evans, but I think it makes sense. I think you make a good point there that it works. What about the Pittsburgh receivers? We got Deontay Johnson at 5,300, George Pickens at 5,000. The Niners have a really good defense, but they do struggle with, kind of deep balls, good receivers, athletic receivers. Deontay Johnson, the famously 147 targets last year and 0 touchdowns. I think we can go ahead and bet on that not happening again. That was a crazy, crazy thing there. Everybody's going to go with the Miles Sanders, comp with the regression. He's going to score a bunch of touchdowns this year. But Deontay or Pickens, do you have a favorite? Is it neither? Is it both? What are you doing with the Pittsburgh receivers?
Yeah, I think for this week, it's just going to be neither. Okay. Just,
Kenny Pickett was like preseason MVP.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, I've never seen a guy catch so much steam as Kenny Pickett. I couldn't believe where he was being drafted towards the end. I know he's really talented. All of his highlights look phenomenal. But yeah, it's just, you can't be on every game here. And I'm just not really going to be on the Steelers receivers in this spot.
And that's a good point, by the way. You can't be on every game. There's a lot of guys in this range we're not talking about. We can't talk about everybody. We're talking about our favorites. But it makes a good point. You can't be on every player. You can't be on every game. It's a big 13-game slate. You've got to just cross some guys out. Let's jump down to the cheap receivers. There are a ton of names there. I found this the hardest. Like, every time I'm like, oh my gosh, I would play this guy every week at this price. And then I realized there's like 7 of them. We mentioned Jahan Dotson a lot is 5,000. We talked about Debo. Brandon Ayuk is 4,900. He's not going to be that cheap again this year either. Ayuk looks awesome. The problem here is there's a lot of mouths to feed in San Francisco, and they want to run the ball. So it's like, with Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk, it's going to be tough week to week to figure that out. But 4,900 is really cheap here. Jackson Smith and Jigba is 4,900 down here. He's going to play. He had the wrist injury in preseason. I love this guy. I think he's going to be someone we play a lot this year. I just don't know if I'm ready to do it week 1 coming off the injury. I don't know how much they're going to really push in this week. So we got those 3 guys in the 4,000s, then a ton of names in the 3,000s. You mentioned Marvin Mims is 3,000. Michael Wilson in Arizona. Like, we don't want to play the Arizona guys, but he's 3,000, playing with all the ones in the preseason. Jaden Reed, and for your Packers, like if Christian Watson sits or Romeo Doubs sits, like Watson's 3,000. Someone's got to catch the ball. Jonathan Mingo's 3,200 in Carolina. If DJ Chark and Terrace Marshall sit, he's interesting. There's just so many names down here. How do you kind of figure out which ones you want to use in this range?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. So I wrote the same thing in my article about Jaden Reed, that if Watson or Dobbs is out, 3K looks pretty good for Jaden Reed. Spoke about Mims. If Judy's out, Mims is going to be the cash play. I would definitely be fine with that. And also, I guess I meant to mention, but also if Judy ends up being out, Cortland Sutton is relatively interesting at 5,200. Just
talk about names nobody wants to click on.
Yeah, he's a tough one, especially. But I think there's a little bit more optimism this season with the Denver passing game and just Denver in general. I don't know. You got to mention it. He would project well if Judy doesn't play.
If Watson sits, is Reed get to be like the same ownership as Mims, or is Mims still gonna be really more popular?
I think Mims would still be more popular.
That's assuming Judy doesn't play, is that assumption?
Right. Assuming, people will just feel safer with Mims. People are also considering Tutu Atwell. I mean, I think it's come out that he's like for sure going to be the number 2 and out there with Van Jefferson. And I don't know, like, what do you have any thoughts on Tutu Atwell? I know we're jumping around here. And then just one other 5K guy, maybe some quick thoughts on Drake London. I don't know. It should be a pretty good matchup. I don't know. Like, he seems relatively cheap as well. I don't know. I know I was jumping around there, but just like, I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned London. I mean, he had a really good rookie year too. I think he we got to, he played the team that, kind of faded a little bit late, but it's hard for me to click his name over Debo at the same price, but maybe that's a reason to do it. They just run the ball so much. It's just like he's got to score because you just worry about volume. I want to see what their offense looks like. So I'm probably not going to get to London this week, but I don't think it's a bad play. I think you throw Tutu Atwell in with the Mims, Mingo, Reed, Michael Wilson range of like, these are guys at 3,000 in like week 8. We would be just itching to play someone like this. I think heavily active at 3,000. Just we have so many choices this week. I just think we won't have this many 3,000 choices the rest of the season. We're like hunting for names down here usually, and now we're like, well, there's 6 of them that I can play. And then we even mentioned Elijah Moore at 3,800 in Cleveland. I think he's really interesting too. There's a lot of preseason talk about him being kind of super involved in a lot of different ways. Like the assistant GM had a quote about it, the offensive coordinator had a quote about it too. There's obviously Donovan Peoples-Jones there. Sorry, the phone always rings here. But Donovan Peoples-Jones is there and probably the number 2. But I think Elijah Moore is interesting at 3,800 too. And I don't think anybody's gonna be on him because there's so many guys in the 3,000. There's a lot of guys here. I think my favorites would be Dotson at 5,000, then probably Elijah Moore at 3,800 and Mims at 3,000 are the 3 that I play the most. But some of these guys are going to have some big games and win some people some tournaments.
Yep. I kind of like Moore too. I don't know. In this specific match, I read the stuff about they're going to use more in all sorts of different ways. And I just read that since he's really good against slot guys, I forget who their guy is, but that's actually like the strongest part of their defense.
That's good info right there.
Yeah, that's what is it like? Sometimes I hope so, but like you never really want that to take you off a guy. I don't know. I go back and forth sometimes, but because I like Elijah Moore in general, like 3,800 is a great price. Yeah. He's still gonna, it doesn't matter about the matchup. He still should see 5-6 targets or whatever, and he's just really cheap. So like I hate for that to take me off of a guy sometimes, but it's still something I think about. And then like if you're looking for maybe a little bit more leverage in that 3K range, I think this Puka Nacua is a little bit interesting, just because like, all this ownership is going to go to Tutu and Mims and Reed and Wilson or whoever else. And yeah, I don't know. Apparently this guy's really talented, and, it could be him that's catching the balls. Like, the Rams are likely to be playing from behind and probably going to be throwing a bunch. And I don't know.
You feel like someone in that Rams range is going to have a really big game, whether it's Nacua, whether it's Atwell, whether it's Van Jefferson a little bit higher at 4,700. Like someone's going to have like 8 catches and a touchdown, right? It's just a matter of figuring out which one it is. If you play a lot of lineups, I think mixing some of these names, it makes a lot of sense. You play one lineup, I'm probably not playing any of them because I don't think I'm gonna be able to predict it. But it looks like Nacua is the number 3, but like you're right, they're probably going to play from behind against Seattle. They're going to have to score to stay in this game. Like the number 3 is probably on the field a ton.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'd probably just play Tyler Higbee if I'm playing a Rams pass catcher.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I do like Higbee. Should mention, like you did just mention Van Jefferson. I'm not really gonna do it, but he does project, I think, for the most targets of anyone under 5K. That's something. We've seen him score long touchdowns before. Juju projects for quite a lot of targets. So if somehow you're on
you see
some
that
Eagles,
you see that report about Juju this week?
About his knee?
Like his knee could explode on any pass.
Yeah. So I don't know.
That was a crazy quote.
I just couldn't do that. So, I'd rather play Kendrick Bourne, I think, than Juju or Parker.
The Bourne identity. I didn't think we get a Kendrick Bourne name or another.
That's to say I'm not going to play any of them.
And ex-49ers legend right there. You mentioned Tyler Higbee. Let's jump into tight ends real quick here before we get out of here. Higbee is 4,800. He's my run back for the Seattle stack. If I'm playing Geno with one of his receivers or two of his receivers, I'm coming back with Higbee. We talked about a lot of the receivers. I think the fact that we talked about a lot of them makes me think like, you know what? I'm just going to play Higbee. He's 4,800. He's the same price as Van Jefferson, and I can play Higbee and then play a different receiver instead of Van. Like give me, I guess my thought is give me Higbee and then like Dotson, Ayuk, Pickens, JSN over playing Jefferson and a cheap tight end. So I think the 2 versus 2 there really works well when I thought about it a little deeper with Higbee. So he's probably my top play at tight end. I got a couple punt plays down here, but what are you doing at tight end this week? We talked about Andrews, we talked about Lamar, we talked about Hawkinson, we talked about Cousins. Do you have a favorite tight end play this week? Because I didn't outside of Higbee, I didn't really have anybody I loved this week at tight end.
Yep, I agree. Higbee was my number 1 as well. I think he's the best from a point per dollar standpoint. Usually we punt tight end in cash pretty much every week, but I do think if you have the money, I think Higbee is cash viable. Cooper Kupp being out, he's Matt Stafford's favorite target in that situation. So, and
Kupp being out is not like a normal guy being out because
right.
So many targets. Like there's a lot of things to pass around in this offense, and it's a good matchup for passing.
So yeah, then after that, the tight end position is just not great, which is sort of another thing that pushes me to Higbee. For tournaments, I mentioned I like Hawkinson. I think obviously Andrews is fine if you're going to play Lamar. Yeah, then spending down. I think people are considering Hayden Hurst for cash games, but I would actually like Musgrave better than Hurst, especially if especially if Watson or Dobbs is out, then I think you can go to Musgrave for 2,900. But I mean, no, like none of these guys stick out. I don't know. People have mentioned Dulcich if Judy's out, but see, that's a weird one for me because he seemed to have not a great preseason. I don't know.
It seemed like he was the backup in preseason.
Yeah, I know.
Troutman, yeah.
Sean Payton brought in his boy Troutman from New Orleans. So yeah, I can't really get behind that one. I'd rather play Njoku or, or I don't know. Yeah. Tight end is tough this week. I agree with you. Higbee's the one I like. Musgrave if some of those Packers are out.
Yeah, I was my cheap punt was Musgrave at 2,900. Sam Laporta looked good as a rookie tight end last night. So we got this group of him and Jake Ferguson in Dallas. Obviously not on the slate, but there's like these three rookie tight ends that rookie tight ends always tough. There's so many blocking schemes. There's so much to figure out. But if Watson and or Dubs sit, I think he becomes playable at 2,900. Pat Freiermuth, I looked at 4,100. You know, he's someone that's popular in drafts, but I just don't like playing tight against at 49ers. Their linebackers, Greenlaw and Warner, are so good covering tight ends that probably has to score a touchdown, and that's always a tough proposition there. If I were to go cheaper, I'd probably go Njoku. Also, he's 4,200. A lot of buzz about him this preseason, so I'd probably go there. Juwan Johnson is mildly playable at 3,900 for New Orleans. Yeah. He had 508 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. Kind of hoping for a touchdown there, but I think Musgrave is a punt. I think I'm just kind of going Higbee on most teams. That it's maybe mixing a little bit of Njoku, but that's kind of where I'm going at tight end.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to do a small backtrack just because I see Thielen missed practice yesterday. He's questionable. Chark is also questionable. We know he got injured in preseason. Terrace Marshall is also questionable.
Johnny Mingo.
Okay, Johnny Mingo for sure, but it also makes sense why Hayden Hurst projects pretty well for 3,000. So yeah, I think that's a fine play especially if you get some of those Carolina receivers out.
And you figure rookie quarterback with Bryce Young in his first game, like it's going to be a lot of check down to the tight end now. Like I just think that they'll make things as simple as possible for him. So that's I think Hurst that's a really good call. If those guys are out, I think maybe he probably moves above Musgrave in my punt situation there.
Yeah.
Ryan, we have a survivor question in the chat. Someone has 4 entries. They're using 2 Commanders, 1 Seahawks, 1 Falcons. You good with that? There's no way I'd go without at least 1 Ravens in there. I think you've got to play. I got 2 Commanders seems fine. I think I'd go at least 1 Ravens, though. I think that if you're going to play that many entries, I think you've got to play the highest favorite, at least one of them.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. That's it.
The Falcons are home against Carolina. Yeah, I can see that. No,
I'm just. Like, are those Seahawks and Falcons, are they going to have easier matchups later? Like, are they going to play Arizona? Like, I'd maybe want to look at stuff like that. But yeah, I think you can kind of go all in on Commanders and Ravens if you really want to.
If I were playing that format, I'd probably go 2 Commanders, 2 Ravens.
Yeah, I think I might even go 3 Commanders. Like, I don't know how often you're going to be able to use Commanders. And again, like, I'm just
probably not again is the answer to that question.
Right. Like, and we keep talking about targeting Arizona. So like,
and it's a good point on Seattle too, because Seattle's guaranteed to play Arizona twice.
Yeah. So I might, maybe I'd switch that Seahawks to another Commanders or to a Ravens, like Scott said.
Yeah, that's what I would go with there. I love Survivor's fun. I know we don't talk about that on this podcast, but I think it's a fun format. Ryan, before we jump out of here for week 1, defense. We talked earlier. We think the Commanders are going to be insanely high, 2,800 at home against Arizona. Projection wise, like if you look at points per dollar value, they blow away every other defense. So they're going to be popular. If you want to play someone besides Washington, what are you doing? Or are you just playing Washington? It's a fair answer also.
No, that's actually, I haven't decided yet is the answer, because this is one of those, people have talked so much about this. I'm not going to get into it, but whether or not you play a 50% defense or not, obviously there's arguments on both sides. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet. I do think that we see crazy ownership on the Commanders, like 50% in a lot of tournaments. Obviously the leverage opportunities are big there. So yeah.
Is is cash game just play the Commanders and don't even think about it anymore? Yes,
absolutely. Okay. In NFL, part of NFL cash games is actually following the ownership at some point. Okay. So when when a defense is going to be that high, yeah, there's absolutely no reason to fade.
Like if they have a good game and they have a pick six or something, like you're off it, you just feel sick. So you just,
I think you lose. You lose.
Yeah, lose
and like,
is a good way to put it.
If they score 0 points, you don't lose because everyone has them.
Right. But a tournament's very different.
Tournaments, yeah. The Packers are the same price, and they have the best defense in that division. And I think that game's, we didn't really touch on that game, but I think it's going to be one of the slower games. Yeah. And
probably why we didn't touch on it very much.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Fields can turn the ball over, so I think that's okay. The Raiders for 2,300 against Russ. I don't know. I don't mind that. I don't know. Maybe you can give me something better, maybe.
No, the Raiders one's interesting. I hadn't thought a lot about that, but yeah, I mean, Russ was horrible last year, and I don't know. Maybe he's gonna be better this year. Maybe with Sean Payton, it makes sense, but Sean Payton kind of is tempering expectations with his. I thought his Nathaniel Hackett comments were so out of line earlier this preseason. I love that Rodgers stuck up for Hackett. I thought Hackett was terrible last year, but like it's just the like comment publicly like that, I just thought it was really poor form by Peyton. But it's interesting. I don't know what the Broncos are going to look like. I think you hear this like Peyton's coming, it's going to be great, but I don't know. Russ looked washed last year, so that could work. The two that I'd play, I mean, not one of the two, but like Ravens against Houston makes a lot of sense. They're 4,000. Right. No one's going to pay up for that because it's going to be so expensive. That's a really great matchup. I mean, going against CJ Stroud in his first game, the Ravens can play defense. The Ravens can scheme. The Ravens are going to have him, seeing all kinds of stuff. So I think if you want to be different, you pay up to Baltimore. Them and Washington are probably the two best on paper. The two in the middle, I kind of like. I kind of like the Falcons. Again, same thing. Going against a rookie quarterback. 3,200, you got to think they're going to take the lead. Then you always like a team, a defense playing at home with the lead. Bryce Young probably makes some mistakes. It's going to happen. So I think that makes sense. The other one is, and I kind of am scared to say it out loud. I think at 3,000, I think the Pittsburgh defense is an interesting play against the 49ers this week. I think their defense is really good. Brock's good. Brock's fine. There's going to be a lot. If they lose this week, there's going to be a lot like, oh, I knew Brock wasn't the guy kind of BS on Twitter. It's going to be horrible to listen to, but Brock can make some mistakes too. They're more aggressive with him than they were with Jimmy. Kyle trusts him more to call up more plays. They'll take a few chances that they would not take in the past. We don't know how the Niners offensive line is going to be. Trent Williams on the left side will be fine, but you got TJ Watt on the other side going against Colton McKivitz. Mike McGlinchey is gone. Mike McGlinchey couldn't block anybody in passing defense and passing offense anyway, but was a really good run blocker. But I just think there's enough here with Pittsburgh Niners early 10 a.m. game. I think the Pittsburgh defense at 3,000 is pretty playable. You might get a big play out of this defense. You're probably in a couple sacks. And, you got TJ Watt. You have Highsmith on the other side. You have two guys who can really sack the quarterback. You make Fitzpatrick is a ball hawk back there, can make some plays. I think the defense is really good. I think the Niners offense will be really good, but I think, Purdy will make a couple of mistakes. It's a matter if they can take advantage of them. So I hate to say it because I'm going to be watching the game and root for the Niners, but I think Pittsburgh at 3,000 is a pretty good play that I don't think a lot of people are going to be on.
Yeah, I think those are both good calls. Makes a lot of sense. One other one I'll throw out there.
Yeah.
I'll throw out the Seahawks. Just because this Rams team, pretty worried about this Rams team. And we saw, I think a couple of years ago, Stafford was throwing pick sixes left and right.
That's right. I forgot about that. He had a huge pick six run that year.
Yeah, and they pretty much don't. They don't really have a running game. They don't. They don't have Cooper Kupp. I mean, this could be in trouble in this game. So I don't mind the Seahawks.
I think that's a good one too. Though, again, at home with the lead second half is what you want for your defense. You want to go against a quarterback who's going to have to take a few chances. In that same regard, like I guess if you wanted to, you can think about Minnesota, but they're 3,900. Their defense is bad, but Baker Mayfield in the second half could be pretty interesting too. I just don't think I can. I don't think I'd click on Minnesota instead of Baltimore at the same price. So I think I just go Baltimore instead. But Ryan, always good to be back talking football with you. Always fun. I know we both have a lot going on in life, but it's always fun to jump in here with you and just talk some football. Anybody else? Anything else you want to talk about before we jump out of here?
I don't think so. Yeah, that was fun. I think we covered quite a bit.
It's a 13-game slate. It's always hard to hit everybody. We'll get people like, oh, you didn't mention this guy, but there's only so much you can mention. But I think we kind of hit on all our favorites. But yeah, it should be a fun season. I'm planning on doing most of these. I've got a lot of stuff coming up that I'm gonna Adam Say his last name for me. I always mess it up.
Adam Zadroik.
Zadroik is going to fill in for me on some weeks here and there. I think I'm going to be I'll be doing most of them, but definitely have some fill in. So I appreciate Adam for that. He's really good. So we'll be in good hands when he fills in. But other than that, we'll be at you for a full season of football. We're looking forward to it. There is very little like the first weekend of the NFL. That first Sunday, like at 9:55, I'm pretty amped up.
Me too. Yeah, I'm very excited.
And you're in like a time zone now that you actually can watch football. You're not getting up at 3 a.m. to go watch the Monday night game, so that helps everybody out too.
Yes,
but,
yes.
Yeah, good luck. You got your Jets on Monday night. They're going to beat the Bills or no?
Ooh, that's a
you like
one.
you like how quickly I went to your Jets.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's okay. I can say they're my Jets now.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to beat the Bills, but maybe.
Fun Monday night game, though. That's going to be a lot of fun. Garrett Wilson's going to be an absolute monster this year, by the way. I look forward to not playing him this week at DFS. He's not in our slate, but I look forward to playing a lot of Garrett Wilson during the year.
Me too.
So, all right. Well, Ryan, thanks for jumping on as always. Then I want to thank everybody for listening. If you could please rate and review the podcast, that helps us out a lot. Also, both of us on Twitter, just as our first and last names, as you see on the screen, or just look it up that way. Pretty easy there. We'll be talking a lot of football during the season. Hope everybody has a really good week. Really good week. We'll be back at you with week 2 next week. Hope everybody has a good one. Take care.
Thanks, Scott. Good luck, everybody.